Hamas is an idea that can't be eliminated, is something I can hear myself, is something Daniel Hagari, the spokesperson for the IDF, said around June. And we've made an episode about that, but I think when we did that, and since this week we are trying to sort of go back and think about the most important parts of the last year, I think this has been something that has been very telling and is very revealing about the Israeli or the IDF strategy when it comes to Gaza. And I think the big problems when it comes to actually achieving the goals that either the IDF states, or rather the goals that or the something we should want to see when it comes to Gaza. So yeah, the idea, and many people were talking about it, that and you've seen it sort of from the both sides, saying that, you know, Hamas is an idea, you can't really destroy it, and the sort of the harsher you go into Gaza, it will just produce more and more terrorists. This has been sort of pushed from the more anti-Israeli side, saying that no, you just cannot respond because it's just going to get worse. You can never actually deal with that. And the fact that this came out from the spokesperson of the IDF is, as I've said, I think really revealing about the sort of how Israel will never be able to actually properly resolve this conflict if it keeps following that sort of strategy. When we originally did the episode, it was actually Marco and Richard doing that episode, so it's nice to have them back here again. So let me start with Marco. You know, just talking about this statement specifically when it came out, when Daniel Hagari said it. What did you think about it? And has anything changed with the sort of with time? Because as I've said, it was about 4 months ago.
Yeah. Well, first of all, at the time, I thought it was an unhappy statement. I think it kind of muddled up the context a bit. Um, you would expect the head of spokesperson for the army, to make a statement like that, in the sense that you cannot get rid of Hamas just with weapons. You can impose a military defeat of Hamas. You can make sure they haven't got supplies and stuff like that. But just weapons will not destroy the ideology. That's why we always make the point that ideology, the philosophy behind somebody's thinking, is what makes them act. So unless you change that very basic background of a person, you can bomb them as much as you like, but they're not gonna, they're gonna change their mind. You cannot force a mind to think. You cannot force somebody to accept the right ideas just by threatening them, and that's part of all sort of principles that come out of it. The only way to destroy an idea is with better ideas. Ayn Rand made this point a couple of times. And the only thing you can do, certainly the very first thing you do is destroy Hamas militarily. And then with the administration of the Gaza territory, making sure that those ideas that started October 7 in the first place are wiped out once and forever. Currently, we know that UNRWA, we've seen lots of episodes and videos where children are talking about killing Jews because that's what they're taught. And that's the kind of ideology you want to stamp out. Make sure that people are thinking rationally, are thinking about creating a future for themselves rather than just existing in order to kill Jews. And that will go a long way towards creating a future where people are more worried about being productive and being living a happy life rather than creating mayhem, destruction. But yeah, it's an interesting point, isn't it?
I think when I look back on it, I think people get far too distracted in who said it, and the fact, they make a lot of hay out of, supposed mini rift at the time between the IDF and Netanyahu and the government, etc., or what an IDF spokesman should or shouldn't say and all that. I don't think that's the most interesting part of this at all. I think that's a total side issue that is a utter distraction. I think more important is how you actually defeat Hamas. and where the truth lies, both within this statement and within what Israel has been doing lately anyway, particularly in the recent couple of weeks. And I think it's the fact that it's both, isn't it? That you need a military defeat and you need to tackle the ideology. Otherwise, destroying a tunnel is redug. Weaponry is re-imported. All of that just continues unless the ideology itself is challenged. Really, it's understanding that and people seem to have this idea that ideas are just some sort of discussion that floats out in the ether in space and is something you can't do anything about. It just exists in the atmosphere or in some ivory tower discussion of what's really going on and has no relation to what happens on the ground. But of course, what happens on the ground is the product of those ideas. The tunnels are dug because people believe X. All of this is the result of the ideas. So unless you tackle the ideas, the root cause of what is producing the violence and the hatred coming from the Gazans, from the Palestinians, and from the other Arab countries around Israel, then you're never going to attain the peace that is the ultimate desire of any civilized person. But it's a lasting peace, and it's the lasting that counts. The lasting is dependent upon changing the ideology.
So moving to sort of what I called in my notes an obsession with the leaders, and I'll expand on it further. But first, are you guys familiar with the mythological creature Hydra from the ancient mythology? So for those who don't know, Hydra is basically a mythical creature that it's sort of like a you can see it on a thumbnail. It's sort of like a snake with many different heads, and basically, if you cut off one head, another, depending on what you read, either two more grow or a replacement will just come out of that one. And I think when it comes to sort of, as you said, the military success, sort of the destroying of Hamas, which I don't want to undermine, when we killed Ismail, and when I say we, I mean the IDF when they killed or the Israel as a state, when they killed Ismail Haniyeh. That was great to see. When they killed the pretty much the whole leadership of Hezbollah, great to see. And now recently there has been obsession with Sinwar. Is he dead? Do we know if he's alive? Every day it seems like a new report comes out saying we haven't heard from him, he might be dead. Now most recently, I think a couple of days ago, I've read that he reestablished some communication with Qatar, so he's probably still alive. But I think this obsession with leaders, I think it is fundamentally ignoring the sort of the root cause, and now connecting it to the Hydra. You can cut off many heads, and many will just come back in place if you don't deal with the fundamental issue, with the fundamental philosophy. And it is the fact that the Palestinian people themselves, they are supporting Hamas. They have been supporting Hamas for a long time. And whenever, people oftentimes try to bring up, but there's people standing up against Hamas. There's, there's individuals sort of criticizing Hamas. And I think we've done an episode about every single one of those sort of standing up, because for one, they have been so few. And whenever they are, it's always one person and the whole crowd, and no one else is sort of supporting him. It's always sort of like a lone individual that comes out. And even when there is sort of a more public criticism, when it comes, for example, I think we've done one episode about the journalists coming out against Hamas. What you oftentimes see is criticism of Hamas sort of as they failed at what they were supposed to do. They failed at October, or they haven't failed at October 7th, but they failed afterwards. Basically, now they are almost completely gone. And you never see something like October 7th was wrong because we attacked a sovereign nation, we attacked innocent civilians, and, let's give up on that. Let's give up on that ideology. Let's give up on Hamas, and let's try to reestablish, sort of Singapore of Middle East, or Hong Kong of the Middle East, or something like that. You never see that. It's always, even we did a few episodes about the polls that came out from the both Gaza and the West Bank, and what you see is when Hamas loses support, it's not in favor of the Palestinian Authority or Mahmoud Abbas, who again are not even closely, that much better. But you always see them. You always see Hamas losing support in favor of more sort of extreme groups, in people actively in jail for trying to kill Jews and being caught. You see those kind of leaders actually getting the support. So similar to that of a Hydra, you can't just say we'll just destroy the military capabilities and then it will somehow be fixed. I think someone in the chat said it reminds me of Japan. Something like that would have to happen, basically saying, declaring war on the basically Japanese people, on basically everyone, not just the emperor or sort of his government. You have to really make them know that what they've done has failed. Because again, I always like to remind that Israel used to control Gaza. Israel used to control Gaza for decades and decades, and it wasn't able to de-radicalize it. And it was because it was so meek at the start in its actual efforts into the radicalization. It wanted to make sure that it's not there, it's not present. We've done one episode comparing the Gaza occupation and the Japanese occupation, which I really recommend to watch for that, because you see the stark differences and the why it has been so different. So until I oftentimes also talk about that, why I'm a bit pessimistic about what's going to happen with Gaza, because of the way the war was led. Like at this point, you know, you can't just now go and terrorize the civilian population just so you can sort of, uh, make up for not going as harsh before. That would be terrible. That's it would be so misaligned that it wouldn't really work. That's why I'm really worried about what's going to happen from now on, since even if Israel does reoccupy Gaza or does try to occupy Gaza, it's going to be really hard to really make sure the population that still doesn't basically support Hamas or whatever head grows up in its stead. Marco?
Yeah, absolutely. Even in the very recent past, we found instances where we went into, for example, Iraq and Afghanistan. We defeated the regimes militarily, but then we refused to impose a civilized society, civilized idea onto them. Because again, we follow the stupid, who are you to tell them what to do? We are not much better than they are. All this kind of crap talk that we're used to here in the West. And just cast your mind back to the bodge withdrawal from Afghanistan in 2021, 2020, soon after Biden came in. And try and remember all the bootlickers on the left that were saying, "Oh, the people are different now. It's not going to be the same. They are an open society." Blah blah blah. How long did it take before women are not even allowed to talk in public? How long did it take before women were relegated to the role of breeding machines and slaves? Which these kind of states do, and that's the kind of ideology you have to define. And again, if you leave the door open to states like Iran to come in and infiltrate the structures of the states and take advantage of it, if you haven't got an ideology and actions on the other side, the counter those malicious states and actors, of course they're going to capitulate, and you're going to find yourself exactly in the same situation you were at the beginning. And I'm not really very positive about Gaza either, because if Israel has been capitulating to the West and to the US by withholding its strategy to defend itself, and its actions have been hampered by the worry of upsetting the international kind of perception of them. Well, you can imagine what kind of budget they're going to make at managing Gaza after. And already people are pushing for the involvement of Arab countries and those kind of stuff. It's hopeless, really. Um, the part of the war, part of the strategy after the bomb would have a Japan style takeover where you literally reforge the spirit of the nation, reforge and redraw the rules and the way people should behave and think about themselves and others. Otherwise, it's just a waste of human life, really.
The current way that so many people seem to look at it is if those leaders are all taken out one by one, the population is suddenly going to take a different road and take a different course of action. And the implication being that it's only those leaders that force them currently to take the action they are taking. Now that is patently absurd because it's clear how much support within the Palestinian population there is for the annihilation of Israel and for the anti-Semitism and the anti-Jew activity of the population themselves. It's why they celebrate October the 7th. It's why they're so complicit in concealing hostages, sometimes within their own homes and all of the things that we've talked about. I think when you look at the leadership, obviously we cheer every leader of this evil death cult who is taken out by Israel. And of course, absolutely, we cheer the death of evil, definitely. And of course, they are symbols. They are symbols which you're also destroying the symbol as well. But it's important not to get distracted by the symbol and not to forget what lies beneath it and what that is a symbol of. And it's a symbol of the widespread ideology. So the post-war strategy it needs to tackle the ideology. Now it's hard or almost impossible to do much inroad into tackling the ideology during the military aspect of the campaign, except that to the extent that you're demoralizing the population through seeing what their own leaders have brought them to in terms of the destruction of the places where they live because they've been used as human shields and all those kind of factors. But militarily is obviously essential, but the ideology is what is the bit that needs the focus afterwards. And I think part of what Daniel Hagari was emphasizing was, of course, the need that once the last tunnel is filled in or the last leader is taken out, whether it's Sinwar or not, that's not the end of it. That isn't the call for victory. The victory doesn't, the victory or the lasting success doesn't come until the ideology is altered. And then the people are then living a different life, a life that values life.
Yeah, and sort of building further, something that has been a point of contention in the war cabinet itself, and also something that I've been noticing as a big problem is I know Yoav Gallant has I think that has been pretty much public knowledge that had a big problem with the fact that there was no plan for Gaza after the war. And there is still none. There is, even when it comes to negotiation, the only sort of thing that seems to be uh, um, persistent is that Netanyahu wants to keep the Philadelphia corridor, which is the border between Egypt and Gaza, to prevent from moving of weapons to basically stop supplying Hamas or any other terrorist groups in Gaza. It's important to remember also that Hamas is not the only terrorist group in Gaza, and also that Hamas is not only in Gaza. You have the Palestinian Islamic Jihad, which is both in Gaza and the West Bank. Hamas is in the West Bank, and I know there's many other ones, but those are the big ones. So yeah, there is this. I think that's a big problem. The fact that you don't know what's going to happen with Gaza after the war. You have no plans. Something that Yoav Gallant, I believe, was pushing is establish some relation with the Palestinian Authority to basically give them the civilian control over the Gaza, which they used to have, and I believe they also still held. They still control some things in Gaza. But yeah, I think that would also be like a giant resignation if you did that. I mean, it's hard to even find like a comparison when it comes to history, like what even comes close to that. But it's sort of like I don't know how much people know, but during the Second World War, when people say France surrender, they've done something worse. They've basically joined the Nazis. There was a separate government that was established in Vichy, which is a city in sort of like southeast France, in like middle southeastern France, and they basically had like an actual regime and have basically joined with the Nazis. And it's sort of like, we are taking back France, and we will sort of give it back we would sort of give it back to them, like to the people that were part of that, instead of what you also had is sort of uprising with what's his name? He became a president, De Gaulle, or De Gaulle. So yeah, it's sort of that also shows such a resignation, that basically, yeah, we are fighting the Palestinians, we are fighting, or they don't acknowledge even that, but we are trying to root out the ideology, but we will give the control over the area to the people not really better in any way. I mean, what is the difference between Hamas and the Palestinian Authority? That Hamas has attacked Israel more strongly in a recent year. That's pretty much it. There's been terrorist attacks coming out of the West Bank of the from the areas controlled by the Palestinian Authority. Palestinian Authority has the basically pay for slay program, where they reward you for killing Jews. Either you get rewards, or if you die during that, your family gets rewards. They they don't want any sort of acknowledgement of the Israeli state. There is no fundamental difference. The only sort of mild difference is that Hamas is a bit more radical, but that's pretty much it. And once you say, well, Hamas is bad, but Palestinian Authority is somehow better, you are not going to do anything with the Palestinian population. They'll just realize, and not to mention even the fact that if you because Mahmoud Abbas is extremely unpopular, so if you throw an unpopular leader onto people, what are they going to do with it? They won't accept him. They don't want him to be in power. I mean, that's why he didn't have an election since the first time he got elected. He is unpopular because he's not radical enough. But yeah, again, by saying he can control it, you are not going to change anything about the philosophy that drives the Palestinian people. You just say, well, that guy was too radical, but you can still advocate for killing Jews, just not too much.
Yeah, and that's why the military conflict is for the moment contained in the Middle East, but the actual ideological fight, the propaganda fight, and all this kind of stuff is spilled out, is now fought on social media and the streets of the West. And one of the problems that in the West we don't know what to think anymore. We keep contradicting ideas. For example, the Palestinians support Hamas, and the Palestinians are not Hamas at the same time. You cannot even start in a conversation just holding these two competing ideas. The other are with Hamas, or they hate Hamas. You can't have both. And until people accept the fact that the Palestinian and Hamas is the same thing, and all the ideology, the Islamic ideology that result in people attacking other people, and as you said, even the West Bank, the various groups in the West End are constantly, on a daily basis, plotting for attacks onto Israel. So it's not even like a random occurrence or something that it's spurious, might happen, might not happen. You can guarantee that that kind of ideology is designed and determined to destroy Israel. So they will never stop until we stop them thinking the kind of hateful stuff that they think.
Yeah, absolutely. The deaths of these leaders are easy measures of success, where they're easy tick-offs that clearly go, yeah, that's one up for Israel, that's good. But that's so short term that it doesn't tackle the ideology problem. And the ideology problem, we do need to name it. It's Islamism and its base Islam. And I think that's what needs to be tackled across the world, is the fact that the politics and the politics of control and aggression and oppression is so woven in with it, in the way that Christianity was woven in with it, you know, hundreds of years ago. But that's the kind of thing that needs to be tackled now. That's the kind of thing that needs to be spoken about openly as to what. I mean, all of us are not non-religious. All of us are atheists. All three of us. But it's we need to be clear that although people can support a religion, it doesn't mean, you know, affecting other people. It doesn't mean oppressing other people. It doesn't mean you know, controlling other people and affecting their freedom. And that's what so much of this is about ultimately, whether it comes to free speech, whether it comes to you know, how people behave, or where money and subsidies, etc., are sucked out for religious purposes. All of that is part of the problem. But these are big, wide conversations where it's reason that needs to take the foreground, and it's only reason at each stage that will lead us to a future path that allows us to you know, to live together, all of us, and to succeed.
And something unique that we've seen happening since October 7 is the rise of anti-Semitism, really vile ideology, really, you know, just a different kind of racism. And we will be talking about that on the reality show in just about a minute or so. So Marco and Richard are also going to be there. Not me, unfortunately, but I'm sure they'll do a great job. So make sure to join us on the reality show in just about a minute or so. The title is A Year of Anti-Semitism. Thank you, Marco and Richard, for joining me today. Thank you, everybody, for watching. We'll see you on the reality show in just about a minute, and also tomorrow on the Daily Objective and the reality show. Bye-bye.
Bye.